The government can now deny or revoke your passport for unpaid taxes. Does this sound at all constitutional to you? If your passport can be taken away for unpaid taxes, what's next? Will the government take away your voting rights, your right to own a firearm? In this video, I'm going to talk about a truly horrendous law that should concern everyone and what you should do if you're worried about losing your passport to unpaid taxes. The FAST Act of 2015 allows the IRS to direct the U.S. State Department to deny or revoke your U.S. passport. When I saw this, I couldn't believe it passed. On the practical aspect, I know that the IRS and State Department have enough work to do and that this law will just burden them even more. But on an intellectual and moral level, this law just bugs me every which way. Why? Because while I know a U.S. passport is technically the property of the U.S. government, the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that the right to travel, even across borders, is a fundamental right. A fundamental right, meaning the right to travel is up there with freedom of speech, freedom of association, freedom of conscience. Fundamental. Rights do not get any more important than fundamental. Now, this is not to say the government can't restrict or inhibit fundamental rights. The government can, and it does all the time. But in order to do so, the government must provide due process, which includes the right to be notified and the right to an impartial hearing. One of the problems with the passport revocation law is the only notice comes through mail. And what's worse is the IRS admits it has a difficult time getting mail to U.S. persons overseas, all who likely have a U.S. passport. Do you think a letter that you may or may not receive is proper notice before revoking a fundamental right? When impacting a fundamental right, the Supreme Court says the legislation must pass the strict scrutiny standard of review, the highest level of review. To pass strict scrutiny, the legislation must further a compelling governmental interest and also must have been narrowly tailored to achieve that interest. And this is where Congress loses me. I get that collecting revenue and ensuring compliance with all tax laws is a compelling state interest. But how is taking away someone's passport narrowly tailored to insurance compliance with tax laws? There just can't be some attenuated or indirect connection between the law and desired outcome, but rather the law must be narrowly tailored. Or to put it another way, how would be infringing on the fundamental right to travel be different than any denial of other fundamental rights? We could make the same argument that if we took away someone's right to free speech for unpaid taxes, that could persuade them to be in compliance. Same is true of freedom of religion. You can't go to your church or house of worship because you owe taxes to the IRS. What do you think of that? Why don't we take away people's driver's license and occupational licenses? That will straighten them out, won't it? Shoot, let's take away their kids to show them that we are real serious about compliance with the U.S. tax code. Where does it end? Now, it gets even more obnoxious when you realize that the IRS was already the most powerful collection agency in the world. The IRS can levy, garnish, and file liens all without a court order. Why aren't these narrowly tailored tools good enough? Is it because the IRS isn't using them to the fullest extent? And actually, that's true. The IRS is so short-staffed, it can't do the normal collections they used to do 10 years ago. So instead of funding the IRS to the appropriate level, Congress pulls this crap, creating headaches for taxpayers, the IRS, the State Department. My prediction, there will be no meaningful increase in revenues. Seriously, we have to ask, is revoking passport costing the government more money than it is bringing in? The same law, the FAST Act of 2015, also included a provision that said the IRS would raise an extra $1 billion in revenue by sending out cases to private collections. So far, this law hasn't raised any revenue, but rather cost the government $13 million. Congress's speculative revenue projections are so routinely undermined by reality, we should give them little or no merit. Now, would a constitutional argument prevail? The strongest argument I see is a lack of procedural due process. You simply should not be able to invalidate a fundamental right by mail, especially when you know mail isn't all that reliable. And that impartial hearing in front of a judge seems to be missing too. With IRS passport revocations, the only hearing you're entitled to, if you're not too late, is in front of an IRS appeals officer. And while I think this law should not pass strict scrutiny, the fact is the federal government is so greedy for revenue and will bend over backwards to validate anything called a revenue bill, even if it fails to raise revenue. However, to win on a claim, I would estimate $150,000, $300,000, $500,000 in lawyer fees, and the case might take years to resolve. In the meantime, the government takes your passport. That's why I suggest if you have back taxes and you are worried about losing your passport, contact us about our passport protection services. Our mantra is that every situation can be made better, so why not have one less thing to worry about? Even if you disagree with me and you think this law is completely constitutional, I'd really love to know why. And believe me, I read every comment. Our channel gets better and better because of fantastic input. So when in doubt, please leave a comment. If you like this video, make that gray thumbs up button black, but only if you really like it. I would hate for you to be on your deathbed and your only regret to be, on second thought, I really didn't like that IRS medic video on the constitutionality of passport revocations for back taxes. I really don't want you thinking about that. I want you to be focused on your loved ones for which you left a rich and wonderful legacy. Click on the link in the description to be directed to the full article on IRS Medic, which includes legal and citations. And we also got some great content in the queue. Some important repeal FATCA updates are coming up. And later I'll be talking about how that crazy IRS Form 5471 got even crazier thanks to tax reform. Be sure to subscribe to the channel by clicking on the Parent and Parent logo here so that you don't miss out on any of these and other awesome tax updates. This is Anthony Parent of Parent and Parent LLP IRS Medic, and as always, thanks for watching.